So a lot of interesting and exciting things we keep doing. So I'm sure I'll reach out to all of you by tomorrow or Monday, just sharing a bit more about ILA. So for now, I'll hand over to Smita, who is the moderator for this session today. She's a co-founder of KelpHR, and look forward to have a great session. Smita, over to you.
Thank you, Madhura. Thank you very much for taking out time and joining us today. So we've been curating these real capsule sessions to figure out what we can do innovatively in the space of prevention of sexual harassment at workplace. Actually, this law came to us in 2013, not too far away, okay? And it has been evolving over a period of time. But there has been impending questions about annual report. Actually, this is the time when we are filing annual report. And there are a lot of questions that keep coming to us. And we try and interpret the law and we try and respond to the way we would want to, be as close to the law as possible. But still, there are repeated questions. So we said, why not take a shot at it and try and respond to as many myths, as many facts, do's and don'ts that we have in the space of annual reporting. So today with me, it was not easy for me to answer all the questions. So I had to get some big bulls in the room, right? And here they are. I have with me Aparna Nair, who's the founder of Astria Law. She's a PoSH consultant and she works with Interweave Consulting Private Limited. I have Vidyuta Lakshmi Narayanan. She is the senior associate with IC Universe Legal Associates. And I also have lovely Sri Vidya with us. She's a corporate lawyer and a legal consultant with Sasha. So presenting y'all the amazing panel that we have. But before that, I want to take a moment to celebrate, right? Exactly a year earlier, 2020, people don't want to remember that year, but this year is very close to KelpHR because this was a year when we launched our first PoSH Awards. And today, 22nd January 2020, 2021, we complete one full year. So I just wanted to take a moment to celebrate because this gave us an amazing boost to tell people that this is something that we should celebrate. If you're doing something good in this place, please share with us because we'll be happy to take it to the entire country, entire world, that what is it being done. So I would want to also on this day tell you that the sequel is up, all right, and 2021 awards are being launched. So keep watching this space, all right? And with that, I come back to the topic today. All right. Aparna, would you want to take one moment and introduce yourself and what do you think about annual report?
Right. Good evening, everyone. It's a good strength of people who are looking forward. I think all of you are waiting to file your annual report for the year. Well, I think like Smita mentioned, this law is relatively new. Everything is relatively new here and everybody's trying to figure out things, and that's exactly what we are here for, also to try and figure out and try and help you figure out further as well. Annual report, I think, is a very important part of the Act because this is a compliance requirement under the Act. And I think this year, especially from what I have noticed, most of the government officials have been taking it very strictly. There has been, rounds of, checking with companies. Have you filed it? If not, why have you not filed it? Letters coming from the commission asking to file it. So yes, this topic is very relevant, and given the time frame we are in, it's a great topic to pick up, Smita.
Thank you, Aparna. Sri Vidya, coming to you, a quick 1 minute. You can tell us about yourself also and quickly about this topic.
Sure, thank you, Smita. And before I begin, a very big thank you to yourself, KelpHR and Indian Lawyers Association for giving us all this opportunity to discuss this. And it's like Aparna just said, it's very relevant, and especially at this point in this month, I think a lot of organizations are figuring out, and those nitty-gritties get missed in conversations, and from simple things like who should sign the report to going up to who are the district officers, as we would discuss today. Yes, there's a lot of confusion, and I think we are at an apt time to be discussing this topic. I'm Sri Vidya, and I think my brief introduction was given there. I'm a part of Sasha. we work specifically in the area of prevention of sexual harassment at work.
Thank you. Vidyuta, would you want to come in and quickly speak about it?
Thank you, Smita. So I work with the IC Universal Legal. We deal with the corporate and M&A. We do more of corporate law. And I think this topic is very relevant because of the fact that it is a very gray area. A lot of our clients, a lot of companies do not even know that there is a filing that has to be made, under the PoSH Act. So, and I'm sure it's going to pick up more pace considering the current situation and how non-compliances are being looked into very strictly for companies, even whether it's the Companies Act or under the PoSH Act. So, and I think while preparing for this session, that's when when we were discussing, we realized that there's so many small nitty-gritties that we it's still gray, so we don't know what's going to happen or how do we go about in dealing with it. So hopefully this session gives us a chance to try to get more clarity on points that are still open.
Thank you so much. So, lovely ladies, tell me, what do you think about annual report? What is annual report all about?
Okay, so let me go. Well, annual report, I'm sure most people here are aware, and I request Vidita and Shiv that also to add in, is a compliance requirement which comes under the PoSH Act, right? The section very clearly says that every year the internal committee has to submit an annual report to the district officer. And the rules are clear in terms of what has to be submitted. So basically, you need to say whether you've trained your employees, you've trained your IC, you've had cases. If you've had cases, have you disposed them of within 90 days? And what is the action the employer has taken? 5 very simple questions which have to be addressed and answered, right? And this is a compliance requirement under the Act.
All right, awesome. Anybody else wants to add anything, please jump in. So next question is, annual report and annual return gets confused very often. We call it return, some call it report. Do you think it should be called something specific, or return report doesn't matter?
Well,
Sorry, Shilja.
no, you want to go ahead, Vidita, go ahead. I'll add to it.
So I think it's more of it's a mix up in the way you're addressing it. Both while the act refers to it as an annual report, it is a return because of the fact that you're filing it on a yearly basis and you are reporting the requirements that is to be made under the PoSH Act, which is the number of complaints that you've received, the number of cases that are closed, or it's just reporting, and that is why there is a confusion in the usage of the verbiage. But otherwise, whether it's a return or report, it is still the same concept.
Right, I agree there with Vidya and Aparna. I think it's being used pretty interchangeably. The law has called it as a report, but it actually takes the tone of a return because we are actually capturing what are the activities we've done and we are sharing it with an agency. So that way, it's actually the tone of a return, but people use it interchangeably. A report per se would be something which should be internal probably to stakeholders.
I have one leading question here because till now I used to think that return is something to do with like income tax return. The organization files an annual return, the profits, they file it as return. So you think return report doesn't matter? It's just the same?
If I may, in this case, it's being used interchangeably. Otherwise, return has a very specific connotation, I would say, because return is something you file with respect to a disclosure for a specific, requirement. So here it's being used interchangeably, is my view, and more specifically because the Act has called it out as an annual report. So I'm sure Vijita and Aparna will also add to that.
Yeah, I think, the confusion is the way it's used. The Act is very clear, it's annual report which you need to file. It's very clear in terms of what you have to file. So that's how I would say, better to be addressed. But
awesome. So another big pain question is, and everybody's rushing, is 31st January is the last day to file returns or report. Okay. Now, is that true? I mean, is that one date which is not negotiable?
So, I mean, if the rest want, I mean, Vidya and Aparna, would you want to say something? Or
So
so,
in this case, the Act specifies a timeline within which you're required to do the filing. From what we've read, there is no specific timeline, but I think general practice is that you file it within 30 days from the end of the calendar year.
Yeah.
Varna, if you have any different views.
No, absolutely. I agree with Vidita. I think it's been a good practice, which is, uh, you know, come up with practice really. There is really no specific timeline that the Act has mentioned. I don't think there has been any, specific notification also which has come saying that you need to file it by Jan 31st. But yes, part of good practice, like Vidita rightly mentioned, it's a yearly report at the end of it, right? So ideal time to file it would be within a month, max first quarter. But I think Jan 31st is a good day to kind of get it done with.
My next question, and which got debated in our PoSH external member group that we are in, that organizations which have less than 10 employees or other organizations which do not have IC, do they also have to file annual report?
So go ahead, Srividya.
yeah, so this is my view. So this is very debatable because it's a lot of it is in interpreting section 21 and 22 in this case. But I think categorically when you call out section 21 says the internal committee's responsibility to file it, which means when you play back and read section 6, the internal committee is with respect to organizations with 10 or more employees. That's probably one bit. The second bit is in the duties of the employer under section 19. If you see, if I were to read it with section 21, the duties of the employer says ensure reports are filed by the committee. So if I have to do a joint reading of this entire data, my view would be that the requirement to file is with respect to organizations which have 10 or more employees. So that's one. And if you also see section 22, what they have said is that employer should file the returns with respect to whether it's a Companies Act or even if it's a, even they don't have returns to file, they still have to go ahead and file this particular annual report. So when you see across all these three plus section 6, my view is the requirement is only with respect to organizations who have an internal committee, which means less than 10 employees, the local committee will step in.
Yeah,
So,
I agree with
so
Srividya
Anna,
completely.
go ahead.
No, I said I agree with Srividya completely there. I think her view is apt. So it is a company which has an IC setup, which the requirement is only for them. Nobody's stopping the rest from filing if they want to go ahead and do it.
Sure. So you're more than welcome if you want to file it, but requirement is that you have 10 or more employees in that particular location, you file it. Now, I have an extended question to this is, what if you have in or like a company like KelpHR, we are less than 20 employees, but we are spread across. Like in Mumbai, we have 5, Chennai, we would have 2, 3, Bangalore, we have 2, 3. So an organization like us, which might be doing PoSH, we do PoSH awareness programs. So do we have to still file it, though we are like 18 employees, but we are not in one establishment more than 18 employees, more than 10 employees? What happens to such kind of an organization?
Aparna, will you?
Yeah. So that's a very, very interesting question that you have come up with. I would say that if as an organization you have 10 or more employees, would you set up an IC? Right? Yes, you would. So then I would say the filing should be made. Maybe not for different locations. Maybe together a filing can be made if it gets too complicated because you have 2 or 3. Uh, but that's what I would, do in the spirit of law, because I think the idea is that any place which has 10 or more employees should have an IC in place, right? So that's what I would say. To uphold the spirit of law, go ahead and do it. May not do it at different locations as required, but do it at least maybe at where your registered office is, or where you have maximum employees, any of that. Vidyuta?
I agree, Aparna. I think it's more of a good,
Vidyuta, we can't
corporate.
hear you. You'll have to. The volume is.
Sorry, is this better?
Yes, much better. Yes.
So I think it's more of a good corporate governance practice. So whether it's the ICC or the LC, or even if there are going to be lesser employees, it depends on what is the corporate governance practice that your company is looking to adopt. Also, the Companies Act mandates you to disclose uh, all the whether or not you're in compliance of the PoSH Act in your annual report of the company. So that itself goes to show that you will have to undertake this exercise every year. So I also concur with Aparna's view on this point.
Awesome. Now, next impending question that I have is, who signs this report? Who compiles this report? Who signs this report? And where is it sent?
So it is the presiding officer's my view. Some organizations do choose to have say that you have to have all the committee members to sign it. And the reason I'm saying this is it's the responsibility of the internal committee to actually submit this report, and a copy of it which also has to be filed with the employer. So I think the presiding officer gets to sign the report. And of course, individually for every administrative unit or location, the respective district officer is the place where you file the report.
And it goes to whom? It has to be filed with district office, we know. Now, what happens if we do not know who's the district office, or where is the data readily available? I'll give you an example. From past 1 month, Neha is on the call with me. We are trying to find out where is our Jaipur district office. There's a whole lot of Google. We'll find at least 25 of them, not 25, but at least 10 odd people who are district officers. But where do you file? So how do we find that out?
For Jaipur, I've already found. For general question, okay, they may answer.
Oh, that's great. Good. You should share it with everybody what you found. I'm sure people must be looking around.
She's based out of Jaipur, so she was tasked with it. Get the district.
मेरे इसमें आ रहा है आपका
Yeah. So I think yes, I wish it was simpler process where everything was available on website saying that if you are at this address, go file it here. I wish life was that simple. Unfortunately, it still is not, and a lot of states have not even, there are not a lot of places where even district offices is not set up. I think the best approach is, do the research you can, try and figure it out to the extent possible. And I think eventually, like Neha has, despite you having such an issue, Neha has figured it out, and try and file it. If you are not able to, if you, I think I think somebody had a view that in case you have, it's not the only office, you have a head office somewhere else, file it there. If that is also not possible, try and send it to the Department of Women and Child Welfare. So basically what I'm trying to say is, do all the ticks which is possible at your end, right, to the extent possible, and keep a record of the fact that you have tried contacting, you have emailed, asked, checked, all of that. Because you should definitely file it as much as possible. Contact lawyers who will be able to help you with it, or your compliance team will be able to help you with it, right? And if you're still not able to, I think still send the report maybe to the ministry or to the social justice department, any of those.
So there's one interesting question from Amrita Achrekar on the call, and this is related to this, so I'm going to pick that up. Does external member have any role in compiling and signing the report? Because I know today only we got a call from one of our clients saying, oh, but you have to send it to the district office. It's not our responsibility, right? We appointed external member to ensure that they do everything. So I was so one of my team member received that call and she's like, this is what is being said. So I was a little taken aback. So does external member have any role here?
So if I may, I mean,
Yes,
Vidyuta, Aparna, would you like to?
yes, go ahead.
So,
Go ahead, Srividya.
yeah. So it's an employer's duty to ensure the IC files. There is no mention in the Act anywhere that the external member has to file. Now, some clients have an arrangement, probably, I'm not aware of it though, that the external member, or if it's a law firm, they go ahead and do it as a part of their service offerings. But the law does not say, if I'm not wrong, correct me if I'm wrong here, that the external member either signs or goes ahead and files it. That's not the requirement.
Yeah.
Smita,
All right,
is
awesome.
that
So, next question, and while the law specifies a particular template, is
Smita,
there any? Yes,
sorry,
Aparna.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to add on, and this was related to, last few discussions we had in terms of the annual report. So one way that I've been at least advising my client to do it is because it seems to be an internal committee responsibility, right? Now, sometimes, very practically speaking, sometimes it's the HR of the organization who's actually going ahead, compiling and doing it, because the presiding officer is somebody who's really senior and might not have the time, right? But I think one way to do it is to definitely maybe circulate the prepared annual report among all the IC members, get them to at least on email acknowledge that they've seen it and they are fine with the contents as well, including the external member, including and ideally the presiding officer signing off on it, right? And including all members saying that yes, we've seen it, we acknowledge it. Is and I think Vidyuta also had a point in terms of having a meeting. Vidyuta, you just want to highlight that?
I think also as a good corporate governance practice, what the companies can do is also record the minutes of the meetings for each of the internal the meeting of the ICC that's been conducted. So there is record to show that everything, every meeting, every hearing has been approved by the committee members. They have been part of the discussions, and there isn't anything that's kept in the dark. And even if it's not possible, for instance, if a company is not unable to find the authority to whom the annual return has to be filed, at least there will be record to show that it has been maintaining the minutes for all the meetings, it has been in compliance with law, and it's also been reporting all instances and stating in its annual report that it files with under the Companies Act that it is in compliance, and any instances are also reported there. So if the companies are able to establish this track record of or document every single instance of meetings and ensure that there is an annual, it's not necessary even if you don't have to file it, you can still have a report, have an annual report that's been circulated in on a yearly basis at the end of each year, and the internal and whether it's a HR department or an internal member of the company can say that this is the record that we're having of any complaints that have been filed, or we don't have any complaints that we have received this year. So it's just good to have documentation so that at any point of time, if the law is going to change or if we are required to do past filings, we will have something in hand.
All right, awesome, Vidya. My next question was with regard to the template of the annual report. Is there any specific template? I remember in law there are 4-5 things that, as Aparna rightly said in the beginning, that these are 4-5 things that needs to be done. Is there any specific template that we should be following? Is there anything that we should be looking at? Vidyuta, you want to go for it? Aparna, you want to go for it?
Yeah, so I was saying, well, under the act as such, let's address the act part of it. There's no specific template that said. The act, the rules specifically lay down, these are the 5 things that you need to go ahead and do as a filing. So, right, there's no template. But from what I understand, that there are, some states which insist on a particular way of doing it. Maybe Vidyuta and Srividya, and you also, Smita, can highlight in your experience which are those states. It will be helpful.
I think Bombay specifically had actually in recent times they had issued a notification, but I think the general aspects that are covered in almost all the in all the states, the five things that stand out is one, number of complaints received in a year, number of complaints disposed of, whether there is any cases that are pending for more than 90 days, the number of workshops or awareness programs that have been conducted, and whether any action is being taken by the employer or the district officer. So I think that's more like a standard reportings that we do. Apart from that, I think you can also elaborate on what's the type of action that's being taken if there are cases that are being reported, whether there is a warning issued, or whether there's a written apology, or whether you're withholding any pay or increment, or whether you're withholding a promotion, or is there a transfer. So on you can also, I mean, reporting can also be done explaining what is the action that you've undertaken, to, for the officer to understand the seriousness of the offense. Anything to add?
Right. I think Aparna and Vidita have kind of summed it up well. And like she said, that the nature of action does get mentioned. Also, sometimes there is a concern whether, who is the complainant, who is the respondent. If I may touch upon this point, because organizations feel if they have a gender neutral policy, there is a need to kind of mention even the complaints that come from male employees. I think the understanding is that the complainant is the woman. The respondent could be any gender, and that will have to be clearly mentioned in the report. And like you said, and like Vidita said, that the WCD Mumbai has asked if there is a re-notification of the IC, they be apprised about it. I think Noida has T-She box. I'm sorry, I think Shore app, right? And
You're right, sure.
yeah, and Telangana has T-She box, and Gurgaon has an additional list of requirements in addition to the annual report that will have to be filed.
Yes, absolutely, bang on. These are the three places even I know, and Bangalore in between started sending a notification to understand whether you've been doing the right things. I think there was a notification which came in Kannada for few of the clients. So just taking that forward. Yes,
sorry, I'm going to play your role. I have one question and doubt to ask here, which came up recently. So, one of the things that you have to disclose is nature of action taken by the employer or district officer, right? Now, what if this action is different from what the IC actually held? Because there are, although they are supposed to, that it does happen that sometimes what the IC holds is not what the employer has done. Then would you suggest that both are said, both are filed, or only what the action was taken by the employer?
if you ask me, I feel whatever the action was taken, that should be mentioned there, because there itself in the report there'll be dispute. But according to me, if an employer is going ahead and doing something which was different, which came out of IC's report, then that is something that we should look at. That should be debated, and that we should understand what are the reasons why there is a disconnect there. Yeah. Anybody else wants to add here?
I think Neha is trying to speak.
Neha?
So conversation has gone so far off and I'm standing right there. So first is one thing I want to contribute and one is my own question. So to contribute on the point where is DO, so as per my research, I thought I should share, which might help others also, that finding a DO will not end our search, because sometimes getting the annual reports and all is what is accountability of DO, but responsibility is held with somebody else. So through DO, we need to find out who actually is collecting the annual reports, because it is not necessary that DO is only doing it. So to have this for annual reports, we actually need to find who is the exact person who is doing it. So finding a DO doesn't end the research. Number one. Number two, my second is the question on the point that Smita raised in his first or second question, that in the organizational structure like Smita has. So my question is that, okay, IC and all the things would be done at the headquarter space, where the headquarter is. But do we need to have any of the IC member from the branch level also? Because since PoSH says that there has to be a PoSH committee on every location of the branch, but if there are 2, 3, or 4 members only in each branch, do we need to have 1 or 2 members in the branch also, or entire committee can be held at the corporate office place only? So this was my question.
So, Neha, I'll just take a shot at it, and then the panel can speak. According to me, it's a best practice to have representation from those establishment where you have more people. Okay, so you could, but if you are only having 2, 3 people, it gets difficult. If in registered office you have more people, so I'll tell you, typically as KELP HR, we have more people in Mumbai and Chennai and Bangalore. So we picked up one each from these locations. We have very few people in Gurgaon, Pune, Jaipur now. So we might not touch them, right? But we have representation on IC from all these locations. Okay, so that's a good practice that we follow. Again, there is nothing written for these kind of situations. So the Aparna, Srividya, and Vidya, you could add to what. That is what I have done is right.
No, yes, perfect. 100 marks, Smita.
Thank
you
you.
and Kalpecha.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So, Neha, I really liked your point, because yes, you are bang on. Finding district officer is not end of the search. I remember doing this last year in 2019 end, calling all the district offices and asking them whether you are the person who will collect the report. So having a district officer address is very, very simple. You get it online, but you'll get 10, 15 of them. Then you have to call those 10, 15 people in that particular district and find out whether you will collect it. But the challenge this year is a lot of these offices are not functional, or they are not 100% functional. So we are not getting hold of those people on the other end. So that's another challenge we are facing. All right. Moving on, Aparna, amazing question. Thank you for that. What happens if, so I think you've answered the template part. Is there a requirement to conduct classroom sessions? So that was one of my client actually recently came back and said that, Smita, we went with the annual report template and to one of the districts where we have conducted e-learning, right? So we did not mention the number of sessions in the report. So they kind of rejected, saying, no, mention the workshops conducted. And they have come back saying, we don't know what to do, because it was e-learning and it is one-to-one. So how do we incorporate such a thing in the annual report?
So if I may, I think the right best practice would be to have one-on-one, I mean, classroom sessions, because they're far more impactful. And clearly we see efficacies, because when we do meet parties, sometimes they say, yes, we've gone through the module, but a lot of it sometimes does not, kind of register. This is just my view. But having said that, if organizations have opted, I think they should mention that these number of workshops covering these many employees have been done through the e-module. So that can be clearly called out in the annual report. And at the point of induction, also a lot of organizations do it. So specifically, if there is an actionable with respect to new joiners, even that can be mentioned in the report, is what I would say.
Awesome. Anybody wants to add anything? So just to give you all an idea, the learning, while I agree with you, nothing is as impactful as a classroom and interactive audience like we are doing right now, where people can also ask questions, and e-learning is like one-way learning. But there is a strong need of app-based learning, games-based learning. So people are evolving, and now with everything being online, people are seeking for online learning, and the generation is changing. So we will have to look at how do we cater to millennials who are coming on board, right? So maybe we'll have to think how we can make it interactive. Yeah. So how do we file this report? By courier, hand deliver, or registered AD? That is another very simple question, but it is an impending question.
My recommendation is always registered post with acknowledgement due. or in person going and getting it, thappa ki, yes, I have submitted it. So that would be the two things, definitely, which I would recommend. Vidita, Srividya.
I agree with Aparna. It's always
I
better
ag-
to have an
Your
RPAT
volume is
and get it
very, very
acknowledged.
low. Vidita, we can't hear you. Your volume is very low. You need to do something about your volume.
Sorry. So I was saying I concur with Aparna's view, and it's always better to send it by RPAT and or get it hand delivered and get a acknowledgement from the authority, so that it shows that we have filed it and we have an acknowledgement as well.
Okay.
I agree.
Sorry, Srividya, for cutting you.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So proof of submission, like both of them said, is required, and I think hand delivered and RPAD gives that easily to the client. And I think this year even emails are going in. But my view is, despite that, send it over mail, but ensure that you also,
You are right.
uh, do a physical copy.
So emails, I've advised them to send it with a read receipt.
Right.
Okay, so attach a read receipt and ensure that you get that and save it and keep. That is one more additional thing. But I'm getting a lot of pushback when I'm saying registered AD, saying that we are not stepping out of the house. Who will go to the post office? Okay, we don't have that facility right now. If we were going to office, it was easy, but now it is going to be difficult. So this is a pushback that I am getting. So moving to the next question that I have is, and this came to me actually while we discussed yesterday, today somebody asked me that I have never filed this annual report till date. I'll be filing it for the first time. What is it that I should do? Should I file it? Should I file for the previous years? What should I do?
See, okay, I think this will be a topic maybe all of us have difference of opinion on. But I think the day the IC is set up, you are required to file it. I would rather, have it filed for the day the IC is set up. So if you set up your IC 3 years back and you didn't file it for the 3 years. Let them come back and say that why are you filing it for the 3 years? They're not going to do that, or say that, uh, rather than have them come and question you saying why have you not filed it for 3 years, at least say the day you figured out that you have to file it, I would say attempt to file it from the day the internal committee is set up, is what my answer would be, because it's an obligation on the internal committee, is what we had discussed.
So in a way, I agree with Aparna. What I would say is definitely file it from the day the committee is in. But if see you, the view could be you've been non-compliant for the previous years where you not filed. So you could send it out with the communication categorically calling out why this was missed, and hence you are sending out those. Ensure that the date, of course, is the current year. You're not backdating it.
All right, awesome. So I think Srividya, you responded to this question on its own, but I'm asking this specifically. Organizations which have gender neutral policies, do they have to report men related complaints also in annual report?
So the requirement clearly, if we are going, completely aligned to what the law says, the law is gender specific. So the call out in the annual report has to be the complainant is a woman, because this full compliance is about a woman. So there is a possibility it's gender neutral. You may choose to add a small note, saying that the policy also covers, and these are complaints raised by men individually. Say it, and if you want that amount of disclosure, say it individually, separately. Don't mix that. Don't put them, club them together, and say number of complainants, male, female. Classify it separately. Call it out as a note. Say this is why you're also mentioning.
Any other input to this, Aparna, Vidyuta? Do you have any other thoughts around it?
No, I think Srividya has covered it, so I don't have anything further to add.
Okay, I have a view to this. While Srividya says that mention it separately, I feel as the law is 2013, I feel only if women victims are there, I think annual report should be sent. While men related report can be made and kept in your own records, is my view. Again, can be debated. Any thoughts on that? What do you all think about it?
I think the fact that it, it's it's not something that doesn't happen. It happens, and the law is silent on it, and it is discrimination per se. So your constitution says everyone, like Article 12, equality, and you get hit there. But the fact is that it happens more to one gender and lesser to the other, which is why this law was formed. But it does not mean that it doesn't happen. So I think, as a if you want to take it up as a good practice, you can always do a reporting. And if there is, because at the end of the day, even if there are no instances reported for a woman, if there are no complaints reported for a woman under the act, you still have to do a filing with nil reporting. So you can, at any point of time, if you want, you can mention it. But it's again a call that the company is going to take. If you go strictly by the spirit or the letter of the law, you're not required to do it for men. So it's a choice that you're going to make.
I think I have to concur with Vidyuta here. In fact, when she was speaking, is when I was thinking in my mind that, I think we've also had public interest litigations going to the Supreme Court asking the policy to be gender neutral, and they've not the act to be gender neutral, and they've refused to do it. But I think filing will help in at least providing some kind of basis when next time we have the data to be available. So maybe it's a good practice to at least the people who are here, who are part of companies, and whoever is advising, also just make this as a stand that let's start filing so that we have data to show that it is happening to both, to all genders, and in that way I think it will be helpful in the long run.
Oh, I really never thought on those lines. So thank you very much for enlightening me. All right, and I yes, more than happy to share the data and let the course take it. Very good, brilliant. Thank you so much for that. What about confidentiality in annual report? Because do we have to mention about the complainant and the respondent data? How do we maintain that confidentiality?
I think the act specifically says that you're not supposed to disclose the name of the complainant and the respondent, and this is something that is very sensitive. And even if we see media houses that go about reporting cases, they have been wrapped up by the courts, saying that you're not supposed to be mentioning the name. So as a practice, when we are doing the annual filing, you're not supposed to mention the name. The reporting is only to say the number of cases that has been reported, the number of cases that's disposed, and what was the action meted out. So it is very critical to ensure that we maintain the confidentiality of the complainant and the respondent, because if you don't, then there is a penalty also that comes with it.
Aparna, Srividya, anything to add on to that?
No, I think she's covered
Yeah.
it.
Okay. So a few questions, because I want to open up to loads of questions pouring in. But how should this be signed? I mean, is a digital signature okay, or it has to be physically signed? Considering the current stage that we are in, where signing, couriering is a big challenge. I know it's a silly question, but it is a question which gets asked every now and then.
No, I think digital signatures are okay. And I know when I'm saying this, this sounds so wrong that I'm saying digital signatures are okay, but please send it by courier, make sure it's acknowledged. But I think the idea being the acknowledgement is for you to basically keep a proof that you did make the attempt and you did try. Whereas digital signature is acceptable, so I think that's fine. Vidyuta, Srividya, if you
Absolutely right, Aparna. Absolutely right.
Awesome. What is the consequences of not complying with the act for this particular reporting?
I think clearly penalties are mentioned, right? So we don't have a choice. Let's keep it aligned, and as practitioners, as organizations, clearly any non-compliance, Section 26 calls out that there is penalties that will be imposed.
Absolutely. And one last thing, any specific advice to the employers, to the HR folks, to the external members? Any last piece of advice before we start up for the questions that is coming up?
So I'll go. I feel I feel this whole enactment, this legislation is a game changer, right? So for the practitioners and organizations and committee members who've been invested in this, they know the outcome. So complainant comes with trust. A respondent is also, given an opportunity to reform. So my view is go entirely with the spirit of this law. Ensure, letter of the law, yes. This, make sure your reports are filed, make sure documentation is perfect, but ensure that you go with the spirit of law when you're actually implementing this entire compliance.
Vidyuta, you want to go next? You're on.
I think Srivati has covered. I think at the end of the day, we have to ensure that we uphold the spirit of law, and whether or not you're required to do a filing, or whether or not you're mandated to do a annual reporting, it is best to document all such events. And for good corporate governance, have internal records that the company can maintain. And I think the Companies Act itself requires you. So whether or not you're going to do a reporting to whether you're not going to have an ICC, or whether you're going to do a filing, you'll it's better to report it in your annual report that you file with the ROC. And because you will be attracting a penalty under the section and under your PoSH Act. And if you're not going to report it, or if you're not going to be in compliance with the PoSH Act, then you're going to be incurring a penalty under the Companies Act, which penalty is a very heavy penalty. I think for the companies, there's a penalty of 50,000 up to 25 lakhs. And
Did we lose her?
Yeah.
Hello, did we lose her?
Yes, I think.
So what Vidyuta was speaking about is also, remember, we also have to file under ROC. So that is important. So if you don't do both the filing, then you have double penalties to pay. So please be mindful of that. Speak to your finance folks who files your financial reports, and ensure that we also take the sexual harassment data and insert into our financial report. I think that's what she was saying. Aparna, any input from your side?
No, I think my only advice, you asking for the advice for them, was to listen to Srividya and what you and Vidyuta are saying.
All right. So my point, one last before we open up for questions. I've been researching on various other countries' laws, okay, simultaneously, because a lot of our clients have employees based out of various countries, and I was trying to figure out. One thing is, our law is so exhaustive, okay? No other country has such an exhaustive law. In fact, nowhere sexual harassment is defined separately. It's HR handling the whole matter. So I think we should appreciate this law which has come to us. I know it has gaps. I know it is not tight or watertight. It has a lot of questions. Like one simple thing like annual report, we had 15 odd questions. Let it evolve on its own. So please bear with it. It is a good thing that we have got, and it will evolve. So I'll open up for the questions. Punita is saying, what if there are registered office addresses, corporate office addresses, and we have less than 10 employees in those locations? However, there's another location called a site address where there are more than 10 employees there. So the annual report in this case will be going to the city DO where the site office is. That's her question. So she's saying office also, there are few people, registered office, corporate office has few people, but there is a site office which has more than 10 employees. So where will the let the annual report go? Anybody?
Mandatorily, they have to file where there are 10 employees for sure, right?
10.
Because as per the act, they have to set up, right? Now, in the registered office, if you have lesser and you still have had cases, or you've, set up the IC, go ahead, do it there also. Like I think both Srividya and Vidyata have been mentioning, let's follow the spirit of law. What is the spirit of law? That, to try and have a safe work environment. How are we having a safe work environment? By setting up, ICs where you can go and complain. And if you're doing that, just do the filings also.
Okay. Thank you, Aparna. Seema is asking, chairperson of the committee has to be senior most age-wise or years-wise or designation-wise? Anybody? Srividya, want to take a shot at that?
Honestly, this is a conflict that comes up everywhere. So I would say take a shot at that point, whether you would like to go with something. So the law says senior most women employee, right? So whether it's tenured or age is not coming out clearly in the law. So at that point, let an employer decide based on what factor will play a larger influence in the what you I would say is the personality of that person to be a part of the committee, right? So you are nominating based on the maturity, the sensitivity, the ability to be able to take an inquiry ahead or be trustworthy with respect, or the kind of confidence you can gain with respect to an inquiry for a complainant or a respondent. So I'd say based on that, either the age or the tenure, go with that kind of a decision. Some organizations very clearly wanted a senior employee to be tenured for the simple reason that if the respondent is more senior or a respondent is a senior official, then for somebody just a junior might not be able to exercise that kind of an authority there in the inquiry. So the majority view is a tenured employee is what I would say. But I would still advise that go by what you feel, whose personality suits the committee.
Thank you, Srividya. Just being a little mean here, I tell them don't go with very senior people because you have to strike a balance because you have millennials coming in the system and you also have baby boomers in the system. So I'm being mean and saying higher X generation, that is our generation people, we are the best people to have on board.
I completely align with that, Smita. This is specifically because the question was, what is a senior woman employee? So that's the challenge, and most times clients are also not convinced when we give them a view. So yeah, I completely agree because you need.
So the response is the most credible person. So seniority in credibility.
Absolutely.
Go for it. Yeah. So Smita Tandon is asking, my client is based in Gurgaon, has been filing the annual report with Department of Women and Child in Delhi for its pan-India offices. I have now advised them they must correct it from this year. They are now worried how to undo this mistake over the years. Is there any advice for Smita Tandon?
I think what they can possibly do is do wherever there is an
Can't hear.
Sorry. I think what they can do, I think this is what even Aparna had recommended earlier. So you can correct it now by doing a filing wherever there is an ICC in whichever region, and say that till date these were the number of cases that were reported. These were the number of cases that had disposed. So I think if you do that to an extent, you'll be able to remedy whatever has not been reported till now. So there is information with the authority as well. So
all right, awesome. There are few questions which came in. There is a new organization in India. There are no women employees as of now. Can the presiding officer be from outside of India?
I think if that's the reason, yes. And I would say hire women into your organization ASAP.
Hire women. And I will share with you that recently we got a case against the senior most person, India head. Okay. And anybody who were junior to him in the organization, who is the presiding officer, was not confident of handling the case. In such scenario, we had to have the US based person as the presiding officer, because otherwise it wouldn't have been a fair proceedings. Yeah. Yes, Smita, that's your response. Rachna Roy is asking, an organization with less than 10 employees, is it required to file an annual report return? No, Rachna, we discussed this, that no, not required. But if you want to, go ahead and file it. Nobody stops you. Swati is asking, for rotation of members, is there any cooling off period? I think what she means by this question is that when people complete 3 years, and they want to reappoint the whole IC members. So is there a gap that needs to be provided? I think that's Swati's question.
If I may, Smita,
Yes.
so the law is just saying that the tenure is 3 years, and it does not talk about reappointment at all. So this is kind of, it's been subject to interpretation, but it doesn't even say that they cannot be reappointed. So there are challenges in smaller organizations with respect to finding the right committee members. In such scenarios, there is a possibility that the members could be reappointed. But if there is an opportunity, the organization's large availability of members who can be nominated, the recommendation would be to find newer members. Sometimes they have members who can overlap, so that you have some amount of handholding with respect to the subject matter before the rest of the members set it. So for reappointment, I mean, if, I won't say there's a cooling off period. It entirely would depend on what is the availability of internal committee members, whether there are senior members or not. If there is, then I would say yes, try and bring in new members. It brings in a fresher perspective, and you're also aligned with respect to the law. If not, then you may have to call out and renominate and reappoint the current member.
All right, awesome. I think our questions are done. Okay, there is one question from Neha. What in case of startup of 50 employees and no senior female member? So Neha, we want you to appoint senior members. Yeah, please appoint 50 members. You didn't have one senior women employee. Please go ahead and do that.
I think if that's the case, then they can do an appointment from another company or another department, as like however it works easier for them. Also, Smita, I just wanted to get back to you on another question that you had asked. I think 3-4 questions back on appointing a member from outside the country. I think it would be advisable not to. One, because the law applies only to India, and it's silent on whether your members of ICC can be foreigners. So for being on the safer side, I think it would be better if we can, unless that person is a Indian employee who's gone abroad, who's working in the in the foreign company, leg or sister concern of the company. But otherwise, it would be better to restrict the members to those who are in the country, or who are citizens or residents of the country.
The issue is we don't have people, like I have many organizations which do not have a woman employee. They're very small employee strength, and they don't have anybody who can be the presiding officer. So in such cases, can we borrow a presiding officer from in and around, as in not the sister concern? Can we borrow presiding officers?
Yeah, I think it says that if there is no, if you don't have a senior level employee, if I'm not wrong, the act says you can either get someone from the LCC or from another department or another company.
I don't know if it says other company, but that is, I think, a little silent about it. And that's why, and why people hesitate, they don't want to get anybody from outside of the organization because of confidentiality.
Agreed. Yeah.
So they're like, better to have somebody within the company. So
that is
actually 8-1, and Richa has come up with a question. Will the judgment for foreign country IC member be considered legal in court? Will the judgment from foreign country IC member be considered legal in court?
I think what Richa probably is trying to say is that if in the event that the inquiry, there is an inquiry and the presiding officer or the member is not an employee of India, then if it does go to courts, the entire composition of the IC may be questioned. So I think that's a possibility, and hence, like Vidyuta said, one may choose to avoid somebody from outside, because the applicability of the enactment is also with respect to India. So it may be a challenge if it does go in appeal, and the composition of IC.
I don't think we don't have any precedents for this till now. So I think it's little gray still. So it's not been tested. Or we've not come across a case law which has a ICC who's a foreigner. So I think that's still a gray area. I mean, Aparna, unless you've come across something.
No, I was just about to say that, of course, I think the first and foremost should be to try and have somebody who is based in your company to be there. Hire more senior women is the advice. But I think if you have a sound reason and logic why you're appointing a foreign national, if it you can, I think it should really clearly say in the board appointment why this appointment being done in the way it is being done, saying to prevent confidentiality, we don't have any other women. You know, we checked and this is the best way possible. If you have your sound reasoning, I think the courts will also uphold it. And a statement saying the minute we have a senior woman employee joining the company, she will be made the presiding officer. And having a committee formed in such a way that there are people from the Indian organization part of the committee, I think you will be able to get past it. But like Vidita said, there is no precedent as of now, but I'm just saying in terms of the way we can deal with it best.
All right.
Interrupt, Smita. Can I just interrupt, please?
Yeah. Uh, I can't hear you. Very faintly, I can hear you.
Can I just interrupt? I just had one question, which I asked. Am I audible?
You very low, but yeah.
Audible now?
Yes, better.
Great, thanks. Uh, on my question that there are 50 employees and no female member, maybe number would be higher or lesser. The situation is that there is no higher female member. So from somewhere I got the answer that okay, one of the director's wife should be onboarded and she should be made the presiding officer. Is it the right solution or is there any other alternative as well? She should be made the part of company as an onboard employee and should be made presiding officer then. कुछ भी designation हो सकता है like diversity manager or something like that, but there should be somebody female. ऐसा कुछ solution है or what? I don't know if you can
I
come.
would definitely not recommend that.
Quite a
Why?
band-aid solution.
Yeah.
That really wouldn't be very appropriate because also there is a conflict here, right? If it's an employer
There's a conflict.
representative.
Okay. Okay.
There is an issue of conflict. But if the director's wife is is running her own company, she doesn't have to really be an employee here, but she's running a separate company and they are like sister concern and all. Then you can borrow presiding officers. That is for sure possible. Um, So this is what I think our district officers qualified on receiving such complaints. Kavya is asking this question. Anybody has a response to this? I don't have one.
You'll have to check with the district officer.
I really don't have if they are qualified to have. But I can vouch for a few district of few LCCs. More than district, it's LCC who receives complaints. But I can vouch for Gurgaon LCC. They are brilliant. Mumbai, we have amazing set of LCCs. So few of them are very, very good, Kavya. But unfortunately, there is no awareness about LCC being present, and that's why not many cases get reported to them. So it is our responsibility, our duty to speak about LCC, make people aware about their rights and responsibilities. With that, it is 8:06, and I would want to wind off this conversation because I am very mindful of all the time that you have spent here. Thank you. It was a brilliant audience with brilliant set of questions. Please stay tuned to these series. We're really working to break as much myth as possible and get clarity on this subject. Thank you very, very, very much.
Thank you, Smita.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Smita.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Vidya. Thank you, Vidya. Thank you, Madhura.
Thank you. Thank you, Vidya.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes, Madhura, you are.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to quickly thank the 6 speakers for their rich contribution and of course, Smita, wonderful moderation as always. So to our participants, so we are building this periodicity of sessions. So we'll be hosting every session on the second Thursday of each month. So you will receive more and more communication from our side. But as I mentioned at the beginning of the session, ILA has this committee where we would love to host you as a speaker, or if you like to write articles or would you like to do some podcasts with us, do get in touch with me. I'll be happy to host you for any of our sessions. Thank you so much for joining. Wish you all a very happy weekend.
Thank you, Madhura.
Thank you, Madhura.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
And that is what was decided.